We are now recording, and I will share my screen quickly. So welcome everyone to the December 2021 Capital District Clean Communities Stakeholder Meeting. I want to thank everyone for being here this afternoon. Quickly run through the agenda. My name is Jacob Beeman, Transportation Planner at CDCC and Coordinator for the Capital District Clean Communities. Our feature presentation this afternoon is going to be from Liz Markham from NYSERDA. She's going to be going over the latest updates for the New York State Truck Voucher Incentive Program. So looking forward to hearing from her. Then we're just going to kind of move into some Capital District Clean Communities updates. What have we been working on in 2021? And what are we going to be working on next year in 2022? Then I've got a few other alternative fuel updates. Primarily, I'm going to have a few slides touching on what's in the new bipartisan infrastructure law that relates to alternative fuels and electric vehicle. And then at the end, we will have time for anyone on the call to discuss any alternative fuel vehicle operations that they've got going on recently. Quickly, just a little COVID update, let you all know what we are doing in the office. CDTC, for a while we were primarily closed to the public. We're now open 5 days a week. Staff is, depending on who we are, everyone is working 4 days a week in the office, 1 day a week from home, but there's always there's always somebody in the office. So we'll be more accessible by phone now. For a while, email was the best way to contact anyone in the office. Visitors are allowed at CDTC with appointment, must wear masks. And most of our meetings continue to be virtual. However, our planning committee and policy board meetings are run in a hybrid format, which allows people to come into the office as well as attend online. So with that, I'm going to introduce Liz Markham from NYSERDA. As I mentioned, she'll be going over New York State Truck Voucher Incentive Program updates, and I am going to stop sharing my screen and start sharing Liz's presentation. So
thank you, Jacob.
Here we are, and can everyone see the new presentation? And Liz, just let me know when you want me to change slides.
Great, thank you. Thanks for running the slides, and thank you very much for having me here today.
Thank you for being here, and sorry again for the time mix-up.
All good, it's all good, thank you. So I'm a project manager with NYSERDA's New York Truck Voucher Incentive Program. I joined the team about a year ago. It's constantly evolving. We've added funding several times over the past year. We've just recently in October, the end of October, we added some additional funds. Talking through that here in a little bit. And Jacob, if we could do the next slide, that would be great. Oh. Next slide, please.
Is this?
Can you hear me?
Not, I can. Are we not? I'm seeing slide 3. Is that not?
Oh, no, sorry. It's still on slide 1 on this end. Sorry. There's the first slide with the intro to the truck voucher program. Slide 2 would be great.
Let me see if it's.
Thank you. That looks good.
Is this what we need? Okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay. You're doing fine. So we currently have a $58.3 million incentive pool. I think some of you may be aware this program supports medium and heavy duty trucks. We also fund transit buses, school buses, and what we like to refer to as repowers, which is conversions of diesel vehicles to battery electric. We've got some good upfitters in New York State that have been doing a great job. It's been a very active part of the program for us. Vouchers reduce the upfront purchase cost and they accelerate or eliminate the payback period. The alternative fuel vehicles tend to have a much higher purchase price than the comparable diesel electric vehicles. So we'll talk about the voucher amounts a little bit later on, but they're based on that incremental cost, the delta between the traditional vehicle and the cleaner fuel vehicle. So the partnership of the truck voucher program, we're trying to bring all the different players together into one arena so that we're all working towards the same goal. We've got the vehicle manufacturers, the dealers, and the fleets all working together there. Scrappage is a key component of the program. We do require retirement of a vehicle. We'll again talk about that in more detail, but that scrappage, that's the emissions reduction component of the program. So that helps us ensure that we're achieving those emissions reductions for the state. So Jacob, if we could do next slide, please. Thank you. So we have funding available for class 3 through 8 trucks, class 3 through 8 transit buses, school buses. We will talk about some of the geographical requirements associated with school buses a little bit later on. And we just recently added funding for port cargo handling equipment. There are some geographical limitations with that as well. So we'll talk through that. Actually, I think I took that specific slide out, so we can talk about that now. Port cargo handling equipment, the funding is limited to marine port facilities that service a marine area in the downstate region, so the NYMA counties. And that's a particular caveat associated with the funding stream for this funding source. So I know that there was some interest in some of the upstate facilities in that funding. We do have funding available for off-road vehicles like yard tractors that may be able to help service some of the upstate entities as well. We talked about the repowers. The repowers need to be certified for an operational lifespan of 10 years. They do have the 5-year service requirement that the other vehicles in the program do, but we want to make sure that they have the potential to run for at least 10 years. And then we have this category of other medium and heavy duty vehicles, and that would be where the yard tractors fall into. If we could go to the next slide, please. Some of these slides have a little more detail than we'll run through, but I wanted to make sure to archive the information here so it'd be available for future viewing. This is our current funding allocation for the program. So we have a mix of funds from the congestion mitigation area and settlement. So different buckets of funding for various categories of vehicles and fuel sources throughout the program. And if we could go to the next slide. Thank you. So the voucher amounts are based on the incremental cost of the previous vehicle. In some of these cases, we can cover up to 100% of the incremental cost, but we often run into the voucher cap. So it's this balancing act of covering a portion of the incremental cost and hitting the voucher cap. So it's the lesser of those two values. So for instance, on transit buses, we have the potential to cover up to 100% of the incremental cost, but we've found that many of the transit buses, the incremental cost is actually higher than the voucher cap, and they've been hitting the peak voucher amount of about $385 on average. So just to kind of give you a sense of where those voucher amounts are. We did exhaust our funding for the alternative fuels on the Class 8 vehicles, but we do still have funding available for Class 8 fuel cell and battery electric vehicles. The port cargo handling equipment that we just released has money for both repowers and new vehicles. So we can go to the next slide, please. So we touched a little bit earlier on some locational requirements. The disadvantaged communities is a key component for both the transit and the school bus funding. For both of those funding sources, the vehicles need to either be domiciled within or service a disadvantaged community. So we do ask for bus routes for both of those funding sources, and those get validated and reviewed and approved as part of the application process. We could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. The other locational requirement for the program is tied to the congestion mitigation air quality funds, and those are available within 30 counties across the state. So what we've found is, especially with the school bus funding, between the disadvantaged community and the CMAQ eligibility, we cover most of the state, but there are pockets of the state where unfortunately we don't currently have school bus funding available. So it's important to, you know, kind of bring those locational requirements to the forefront when we start discussions with schools, just to make sure they're eligible for the funding sources that are currently available. The nice thing is there's a lot of potential funding in the pipeline for school buses, especially through the infrastructure bill that was just recently announced. So we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the vehicle scrappage requirements are a key component to the program. The scrappage requirements really help us achieve those emissions reductions. Vehicles need to have an engine model year of 1992 to 2009 and be pure diesel vehicles. So diesel hybrids do not qualify for scrappage through the program. The gross vehicle, the GVWR, I could not remember that at the moment. It needs to be an equivalent vehicle size, vehicle location. And so those types of things are reviewed during the application review. Could go to the next slide. We just made some exciting changes to the program. Scrappage can be a hurdle for some fleets. What we've learned is some of the fleets that are really excited about electrification and maybe can afford to purchase the new vehicles are already maintaining their fleets, and so they don't have those older vehicles still in use within their fleet. So they have the money to do the project, but they don't meet the scrappage qualification. Or, you know, we have the flip side where maybe they have some of those vehicles, but they're not the same vehicle that they want to purchase for the new investment. So we were able to just introduce some flexibility. We worked with our funding partners and changed some of the qualifications for the program, which we were able to tie into changes to the implementation manual. That flexibility in part is due to some of the stakeholder feedback that we received for challenges they experienced during COVID. So one of those key points is the registration. We found some fleets, especially downstate, had taken vehicles off the road during the lockdown. And they weren't sure when they could put those vehicles back in use. And so they were conserving funds, took the vehicles out of service. Unfortunately, the program required 24 months of continuous registration. So we were able to write into the program requirements to allow for a small lapse. So they need to be registered for 24 of the most recent 27 months. We also were able to write in some flexibility that the registration and usage requirements could be met by a previous owner. And that means that those fleets that have the funds to purchase the new vehicles, but maybe didn't have those vehicles in their fleet, the scrappage vehicles in their fleet anymore, could purchase the older vehicles from someone else. And maybe that comes about as a trade, right? Maybe they're able to shift some of their cleaner but older vehicles to a smaller fleet who can't afford to purchase a new vehicle. So fleet A could purchase a brand new vehicle, buy an older vehicle from fleet B that meets the scrappage requirements. And within that transaction, maybe they're also selling one of their older but cleaner vehicles to fleet B. And in that process, both fleets then upgrade their vehicles and their emissions status. So we also were able to write in some class size flexibility. So previously, a class 4 was only able to be exchanged for a class 4 or a class 5. that class 4 could now be exchanged for a 4, 5, or 6. It does only apply within that class 4 to 7 range, and it only applies for new battery electric vehicle purchases. So, but that does allow for some flexibility to the fleets. And we can go to next slide, please. Thank you. I did want to include a chart that shows both the service requirements for the first 5 years of the new vehicle, as well as the service requirements for the previous 2 years for the scrapped vehicle. So this helps determine the eligibility for the program. And when we do receive new applications, we're looking to that chart on the right-hand column to make sure that the scrappage vehicle meets those program requirements and eligibility requirements. And then when fleets purchase a new vehicle, they need to commit to using that vehicle for a minimum amount of miles each year, and to complete reporting for the first 5 years so that we can track those emission savings. We can go to next slide, please. Thank you. So I'm skipping ahead a little bit. So we do have the minimum of 5 years and at least 5,000 miles per year for a truck, 8,000 miles per year for a school bus, for usage requirements on all new purchases. And we do 3 years of reporting and detailed emissions tracking for the first 3 years. Any vehicles leased through the program. So we do incentivize leasing arrangements. The leasee is committing to the same terms of service as a new vehicle purchaser. So that same 5 years, same 5,000 mile requirement. And we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So one of the challenges for fleets is, not just purchasing these new battery electric vehicles, but they also need to address the infrastructure component. And, while we don't fund purchase of the charging infrastructure and those costs through the truck voucher program, we have partnered with the Make Ready program through the JU, the Joint Utilities of New York. And so JU has Make Ready program where they provide fleet advisory services, including site assessments and funding, which offsets the cost of the infrastructure upgrades that may be needed to support the fleet's electrification. So we've been working closely with the JU, sharing information on projects that are in the pipeline. And likewise, they're sharing information with us if fleets have contacted them, so we can work in coordination to help all the interested fleets electrify efficiently as we move forward. So, and we have next slide with my contact information. We do have a voucher help center at your one-stop shop for any questions related to the program. It's staffed from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And they can address any questions related to potential projects, inquiries about eligibility, application process, all of that. And if there's any other general program questions, I'm happy to answer them as well. My email address is there, and the program website has a number of excellent resources available, customized to fleets, purchasers, original equipment manufacturers, and dealers. So thank you. Any questions?
Hey, Liz, that was great. Does anybody have any questions for Liz while she's still on the line?
Start video. Hi, Liz. Steve Iacat at the airport. Thanks for your great overview. Just curious if our fleet of 8 buses might qualify as a transit bus. They run 24/7 every day of the year and are way over the 5,000 mile requirement. 250,000 is more like it. But I wonder if we would be eligible under the transit bus incentive eligibility. I can call the helpline if you prefer me not to bring it up there.
I think that's an excellent question. There's always this gray area on the transit agencies. We have 5 specific agencies that qualify for the VW funding right now. We're in round 2 of that. So they're the 5 state of the state transit agencies. I should be able to list them off the top of my head, but I can't.
That's fine. Sorry to stump you.
That's all right.
Thanks very much. We are very interested. We took a hard look at the VW program, and we just couldn't get the benefit to come close to the cost on it. So we're stuck on stymied on that one. We'll take a hard look at your truck voucher. It looks good.
I was going to say, you may qualify under the CMAQ funding. That is a lower voucher amount, but you also wouldn't need to scrap a transit bus in that case. So we should connect by email and we can investigate if you would qualify under that as well.
Thanks so much. We remain very interested and grateful for your efforts. Thank you.
Yeah.
Liz, I had a question.
Yeah.
If someone were to be looking at an electric vehicle that isn't currently on the existing vehicle list, I guess I've been told that there is a way to work to get a new vehicle added to that list. Could you maybe just quickly, like, what would that process entail, and who would be like, what would be the first step in making that happen?
Certainly. So the website link there will actually hyperlink you through to the eligible vehicle list. And there should also be a link straight from that page to the eligible vehicle application. So a dealer or a manufacturer can submit an application to have a new vehicle posted to the program. And the implementation manual details the eligibility requirements. They're pretty straightforward. A lot of the focus is on warranties and service. They need to meet some Buy America requirements, but it's a pretty easy process to get new vehicles added.
Okay.
And likewise, new dealers and contractors as well. So.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Liz, Jason Jones here from Albany. I know we've talked briefly through some communications. But we're struggling a little bit with the program. Not that I don't want to paint the wrong picture.
No, it's okay.
Members that the program's bad. It's a great program, but we are struggling at the university here trying to figure out, so maybe I can just ask you a couple of direct questions. It relates to the vehicles on the list that are eligible.
Mm-hmm.
Since the electric trolley that we're looking at, there's 3 companies that offer the trolley. So do we reach out to how do we determine which one of the 3? Because it seems like as a state entity here, we still have to bid the project. Does that mean we bid it out to the 3 people that are eligible on the list?
Well, you could start there for sure. But if you have other fleet contacts that you already have relationships with who would be eligible to sell that product, you can certainly bid through them as well. So if they don't have a relationship currently with the OEM, they could always reach out to the OEM to ask for permission to sell that vehicle. But the vehicle needs to be either through an authorized dealer or the manufacturer directly. Does that help?
So the 3 companies that are listed, they may not be the only. So there may be other people. We would tell them, hey, listen. So the state would essentially go out to bid, and maybe, let's say, for instance, different 3 companies bid on it. Not that it would happen, but we would have to tell them at that point, hey, listen, you would have to then, if you want to be part of this funding, go get added to the list.
Yes. Yep.
I guess our assumption is when we bid the trolley out that these 3 companies will probably be the one that'll actually respond to us. But like I said, we're struggling. It just seems like for us, it's just complicated. We still got to meet state procurement rules. We're trying to take advantage of the funding through NYSERDA. So it just doesn't seem to be a very straight and a straight path for us. And again, that's not something wrong. I'm just trying to, from our standpoint, it's become overly complicated. We're still trying. We're still going to push, but
I I could anticipate that. Yeah. And I would recommend, and you're probably already doing this, right? Making sure those 3 companies are on the list so they're notified of this listation. But that doesn't mean that they know what that means, right? So you might also need to pick up the phone and call them and say, we're interested in this trolley. You're on the list for the TVIP program. We're putting out a bid, but in order to be able to consider you to purchase from, we need you to put a bid in, because they may not be familiar with the state procurement process also. So there's probably a learning curve on both sides of that equation. And alternatively, if you do get a bid from another company that you like their product or their offer, it's not a big leap to have them qualified for the program, either as a dealer or as a new piece of equipment. So it's a pretty straightforward process.
Thank you. And I know, Jacob, we often do like news around the table, but just to save a piece for the members around the call here, the University of Albany is exploring the purchase of an electric trolley primarily used for admissions events. So that's why we're going forward with this program. And again, I know we kind of do a news around the table sometimes. So just a brief update of the context of this question is the university is trying to, we have a new facility, which is called eTech over on our Harriman campus. And we're trying to get away from just putting people on 40 passenger diesel or gasoline buses. Even though we do have some hybrids, we are trying to do something with this electric trolley. That's part of our question and things that we're working on. Thank you.
It's an exciting project. And I always like the local ones because then when you drive around, you can see the vehicle, right? You see what your work resulted in. So, yeah.
Any other questions for Liz? I'm hearing none and see none in the chat. So if you can leave us now, Liz, if you'd like. I know you've got another meeting to get to, but thank you very much. Definitely appreciate that information. And you're able to answer a lot of my questions that I kind of read up online, and there's always kind of those gray areas that are a little difficult to figure out. So thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. And I'm sorry I have to leave so quickly, but I hope you have a great meeting.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
So if we, let me reshare my screen here. Okay, so can everyone see my presentation again?
Yep.
Very good, thank you. All right, so moving on next, I'm going to go through a couple Clean Communities updates that we've been working on through 2021, and like I said, touch on a little bit of what we're thinking about moving into for 2022. So we're going to list, kind of walk through the main contract tasks that we work on through our Department of Energy contract, stakeholder listening sessions, technology, education and outreach, technical assistance, and some training and education events that we have been working on. So first, our alternative fuel stakeholder listening sessions. These are listening sessions that we have kind of in a private setting with individual vehicle fleets or a group of like vehicle fleet managers. They're intended to kind of collect the firsthand accounts of how alternative fuel vehicles are operating in the real world. These sessions are intended to be private, and we don't post them to be available to the public for the sake of getting honest feedback from the users. We hope to hear the good, bad, and the ugly on the particular vehicle or vehicle technology that the fleet is using. So this year we had 2 planned listening sessions, one looking into electric yard trucks and the other propane school bus fleets. So in June, we held a listening session with Dimension Fabricators to learn more about their experience using an all-electric yard truck. Dimension Fabricators is a concrete rebar reinforcing manufacturer located in Schenectady. They have been operating an orange EV electric yard truck since 2017. And they actually used a former iteration of the truck voucher incentive program to purchase that vehicle back in 17. So they've got a handful of years under their belt with it. And as I mentioned, we can't really go into too many of the nitty-gritty details of their listening session, but just some high-level overviews. They've had a very good experience with this truck so far. It's primarily used to move trailers around their facility to loading docks. It's also used inside to bring trailers inside to be loaded and then move back outside to be to be hooked up to their delivery vehicles. So very positive feedback so far. Very few maintenance issues, and all of them were addressed very quickly and effectively by the manufacturer, according to Dimension. They've seen lower maintenance costs already using the vehicle, and obviously noted, the reduced kind of fluids that need to go into the vehicle, no oil filters, no DEF, no transmission fluid, and also the regenerative brakes on the vehicle offer prolonged lifespan of the traditional friction brakes. So they're kind of very keen on mentioning that. In addition to the vehicle itself, driver feedback has been very positive. They obviously note the reduced noise and the fact that it is operated indoors on a regular basis. The zero tailpipe emissions is a big, highly noticeable and a big positive for all of their employees, both the folks that are driving the vehicle as well as just folks working in the facility. So a lot of great things to say about that. And like I said, we take detailed notes on these sessions, package them up, send them back to the Department of Energy, who then uses that information to go back to the manufacturers of vehicles and infrastructure to hopefully work with them to make future iterations of the vehicle better. So the second listening session that we had planned for this year was initially a propane school bus listening session. Our intent was to have a multi-fleet session. We know of, I think, 7 or 8 local school districts who operate at least one propane school bus, or did at one time. So we were hoping to try to get all those folks together in one room in one meeting to have a detailed discussion on their experiences. Scheduled that event for October 7th. However, we didn't really get the attendance that we were hoping for, or confirmed attendance that we were hoping for, so we ended up canceling. Did have a handful of folks that were signed up, but not the fleet managers that we needed. So right now I'm planning on trying to push that back and kind of going after it again in the spring. Hopefully make some more phone calls, touch base with some folks, and see if we can get at least 2 or 3 propane school bus fleets in the room to get some feedback on local operations of propane school buses. I'd always welcome any thoughts on how to better engage with propane fleets, or if anybody has any thoughts on any useful listening sessions that we could explore in the future. I'd be happy to hear those comments, whether you want to chime in now or type them into the chat, or just shoot me an email. I think, listening sessions are something that we plan on doing next year. It's typically kind of a case-by-case basis where we'll be working on something and discover a new fleet that, we might like have a listening session with, but our ears are open, and always happy to, hear any new fleets in the area that we might be missing, and open up a listening session with them. Next task that we've been working on is our fuel technology outreach and education events this year. This one is, the COVID over the past 2 years has kind of slowed these types of events down for us. But for that reason, we've tried to focus a little bit more this year on our digital outreach. So newsletter, website updates, and trying to tackle social media a little bit more. Currently, we're in the process of transitioning our old Capital District Clean Communities website to our Capital District Transportation Committee website. And for those of you on the call who might not know that relationship, Capital District Transportation Committee is our host agency and the local MPO for the Capital District. So it's a website that gets a little bit more traffic, and it's a little bit easier for us to maintain. We have ongoing kind of consultant support for it, so it's easier for us to update, maintain, and make sure that the information is conveyed properly. So we've been working with our consultant to develop a specific clean community section of the website, trying to get it its own look and feel, so it feels like a separate website, and trying to upload that information on what we do, what we have done in the past, and try to keep it updated with the latest alternative fuel news and resources. Just a quick screen grab there on the slide. We were able to embed the alternative fuel station locator, which will show you all of the local alternative fuel fueling stations, electric, propane, CNG, with also some great links back to the Department of Energy site with more information on all alternative fuels. I've also started working on a newsletter. Some of you may have noticed that we sent out a newsletter early October. And this is something that in 2022, we're going to try to make a monthly post. So it'll be a local newsletter that comes in the form of an email blast. We want to keep it highlighting local fleets, new charging in the region, new alternative fuel vehicles in the region, latest updates on what we're doing as a coalition, as well as other clean communities coalitions in New York and the Northeast. It's something that we kind of realize that at times we may go silent on our email list, and want to make sure that in the future we have a more regular presence online and on social media as well. Along with that, we understand that we've kind of been sporadic, but right now actually at CDTC, we're in the process of hiring a new staff member that's going to specifically focus on public outreach and education, including the Capital District Clean Communities kind of social media and website presence. So we're hoping to have somebody that's going to be a little bit more time, a little bit more full-time to maintain consistent contact with all of our members. So that's something that we're looking forward to in 2022.
Jacob?
Yes.
Slides are still on slide 1.
So you are seeing the introduction slide?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Josh. Sorry about that. Let
No
me
problem.
see. So are we seeing my presentation now?
You might need to put it in presenter mode, like there, right there.
Okay.
Try that.
And is that moving along?
Nope, it still just shows slide 1.
Interesting. Yeah, because that's what I had it in presenter mode, and I guess it wasn't moving along. How about now? What are we seeing now?
Slide 7, fuel and technology outreach.
Okay. And it's still, did that move along?
Nope.
Sorry about this.
You could probably just manually click on each slide as you go through.
Yeah. Let me see if.
You could try downloading it as a PDF.
Yeah. Let me see.
Oh, God.
How about now? Is that moving through?
Yeah, I sent you an email. Lost PDF and lost PDF, lost Zoom.
Is that moving through the slides now on your end?
No, it's not.
It's
Yeah, I did.
still on.
And
Okay.
also, this new computer, which is fucking annoying, tells me that the printer.
Okay.
Launch
I can just
app
move through
printer.
on this level, I believe. So
But
you all
I
can see this.
because
You can see the
I don't
slides
have
now,
a
Josh.
Cabiche. All right. Thanks, man.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to just move through not in presenter mode because that seems to be an issue here. So fuel technology and outreach, in addition to the social media, we've also been working on electric vehicle ride and drive events this year, trying to kind of rekindle some connections that we have with local dealerships. And trying to piggyback onto some local municipal and kind of clean energy events that are happening in the region. This task has been a little bit slow going this year, primarily because of the vehicle shortage. When we're trying to reach out to local dealerships to have ride and drive events, there is rarely any vehicles available for them to have at that event. But fortunately, we were able to make some connections with the Leah Group as well as Niemer Volkswagen. And we actually did hold a ride and drive event with the town of Colony, coinciding with their Clean Energy Week. So we had a couple booths at the Crossings Park, and we had Niemer there with their new ID4 to, for people to take for test drives. As people were kind of going on their lunch break walks around the park. So that was back in October. We had another ride and drive planned with the town of Bethlehem, but there was actually the vehicle was sold on us the night before. So that's something that we're continuing to work on through 2021 and hopefully into 2022. Schedule a few more of these ride and drive events. Like I said, we're trying to piggyback on kind of existing events to maximize kind of the ridership at those. But it's also something that we're thinking about potentially having kind of an EV fair hosted by CDCC and or the Clean Communities Coalition next year. So that's kind of on the event horizon for us right now.
Hey, Jacob.
Yes.
So I was just wondering, I mean, maybe you could try to partner with a local municipality if they have a newer EV and, kind of, use that as kind of like a test vehicle,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea. So we've actually, kind of similar to that thread, we've been in talks with the local EV riders group or EV drivers group to try to kind of set up a similar situation where we have, privately owned vehicles there for ride and drives. And, obviously, at least, not everyone is comfortable with having outsiders drive their vehicle. But typically it is an opportunity for at least getting vehicles at an event so that, folks can kind of look and feel and see electric vehicles up close. So yeah, that is but we actually, we haven't done that same thing with municipalities, but that's, it's a couple in my mind that could work. So thanks. I'll note that. So targeted fleet coaching and technical assistance. This is a project that we've kind of had ongoing with the town of Bethlehem. EV fleet feasibility study. So the town came to us earlier on in the year indicating that they wanted to start to look into transitioning their full municipal fleet to electric vehicles. And, the Department of Energy has some tools that allow us to develop a full total cost of ownership analysis for traditional internal combustion engine vehicles, as well as alternative fueled vehicles. That way, the full total cost of the vehicle over its entire lifespan can be evaluated and kind of takes away maybe that, the sticker shock of just the purchase price comparison. So we've been working with Bethlehem, developed an initial database of over 350 town-owned vehicles, went through that and identified each vehicle's duty type, fuel type, average miles traveled per year, typical fuel consumption, and any available EV alternatives that each vehicle might have. From there, we've met with the town staff several times to kind of determine what subset of that fleet really needed to be evaluated further. There's some vehicles that we can cross off the list early on to say that they're not really an adequate electric vehicle alternative at this time. But there's others that are kind of, our prime candidates for EV transition. Another piece of that is where each of those vehicles are located. So when we're talking EVs, a big piece of that is how are they going to be charged? So that comes down to what's the location that vehicle resides at, and what's the ability to install charging at that location. In this case, the town indicated that the fleets that are located at their town hall garage would be kind of the best bet to look at early on. So we move forward from there using our A-Fleet tool, which that translates down to alternative fuel, life cycle, environmental, and economic transportation tool. So kind of long-winded, so we just call it A-Fleet. But this tool is able to give us a pretty detailed total cost of ownership over that lifespan of the vehicle. So initially, like I said, we broke this down and looked only at vehicles at one garage location. And that ended up being code enforcement fleet, engineering fleet, senior citizens fleet, or senior services fleet, in the police fleet. So from there, really what we had to do was determine which vehicles were we going to compare. Town indicated that, going forward, it would be good to use kind of a consistent fleet mix. Obviously, those existing fleets had several different types of SUVs, sedans, but for the sake of this comparison, we wanted to compare kind of one gasoline vehicle moving forward to a variety, kind of low, medium, and high cost electric vehicle alternatives. So in this table here, you can see, after we ran our analysis specific to the town's vehicle usage. So, obviously, we have these individual vehicles that have, their own purchase price, and that factors into things. But depending on the individual fleet and the miles traveled and the gasoline consumption, all of these numbers could change kind of depending on the fleet that we look at. So in this case, this gives us an idea that our Chevy Equinox with a purchase price of around $25,000 comes out to around $43,000 per vehicle after its 10-year lifespan. You know, equivalent to that, we have the Chevy Bolt as our low-cost electric vehicle alternative with a total cost of, I think, around $28,000 purchase price on the, that's from the OGS bid, most recent OGS bid prices that we found on the Bolt. You know, after that 10-year lifespan, although it has a higher purchase price, we can see that it has a lower total cost of ownership. However, when we start looking at the Ford Mach-E, Hyundai Kona, which have purchase prices of around $50,000 for the Mach-E and $40,000 for the Kona, due to the miles traveled, those don't really get down to a lower total cost of ownership over that total 10-year lifespan. So, you know, that's something that we did. You know, this is just kind of a high level overview of a few of the vehicles in one particular fleet that we looked at for them. Right now, it was about a month ago, we provided the town with some kind of detailed analysis with some graphs and charts that break down all of those. Right now, they're currently looking into that further to determine maybe what the best next step is into the transition. Currently, they do already have one plug-in hybrid vehicle, but they're using that information to determine what's going to be, you know, most feasible in the future. And you know, one interesting point to that is that the police fleet was actually showing the most benefit due to the high mileage of those vehicles, right? More miles traveled, the more maintenance savings that you can see in the electric vehicle compared to the gasoline. So this is something that we've worked on, like I said, mostly through this year with the town of Bethlehem, but this technical assistance is something that next year we're more interested in working with others. So, you know, if someone has a fleet of light duty vehicles that is interested in kind of understanding what that difference of total cost of ownership would be to a new electric vehicle based compared to, you know, a new gasoline vehicle, you know, we'd be happy to help. So feel free to reach out and contact me on that. This is something that, you know, we hope to continue working with local municipalities as well as private fleets if there's a need for that. Training education, you know, this is something that we had planned for Q4 of this year, but we've had some kind of internal staff turnover. This has gotten pushed back. We're looking at early next year to kind of host this event. What the idea is here that, you know, we have had a lot of interest from multimodal facilities, port facilities, in what's out there for alternative fueled vehicles for them, including off-road vehicles, you know, heavy duty vehicles, construction vehicles, things maybe a little bit outside the realm of our typical light duty electric vehicles. So we're going to be trying to put together a, you know, multi-day webinar, probably potentially getting something in person and maybe getting some of these vehicles here on site so that folks can take a look at them and potentially get their hands and drive them as well. But yeah, so that's something that we had been looking at for this year, but ultimately I think that's going to be early 2022 to be looking out for that. Annual reporting. As many of you know, each year Capital District Clean Communities reaches out to our members to get information on the latest greenhouse gas emissions reductions and fuel consumption for the Capital District. I'm going to begin this process in January probably, so you can expect to get an email from me. Typically, we'll be asking for any new alternative fueled vehicles that you may have purchased, and fuel consumption and typical miles traveled. So typically we collect this information. Again, this is all confidential, doesn't get released to the public. We're able to package this data up for all of our local fleets that are using alternative fueled vehicles, document that alternative fuel use, send it to Department of Energy. They package that together back for us in kind of a neat and tidy document that's able to produce the, give us these nice pie charts that we have here. 2020, 3.5 million gallons of gasoline equivalents reduced. But not only does that give us the information locally, but it allows the Department of Energy to kind of measure, quantify the benefits of the Clean Communities program at the federal level. So they take information from coalitions across the country and roll that up into kind of a national level document to quantify that. So again, be on the lookout. That's something that we'll be doing starting in January, probably through March. So be on the lookout for those emails. That's kind of it for the contract work. Again, I was going to move into kind of our other alternative fueled updates, which is primarily a quick update on what the new bipartisan infrastructure law has for alternative fuels. So I've got a few different slides here that were passed along from our friends at Federal Highway. I'd asked them to present, but everyone was, as you can imagine, very busy this time of year. So real quick, wanted to go over a couple high level. Sorry about that. So real quick, what's in the bipartisan infrastructure law for alternative fuels? So overall, it's $7.5 billion over the next 5 years. This is broken down. It's kind of two different areas with really, but not all of the information is out yet. But the primary focus is to address climate change. And there will be a focus of kind of spending this funding along existing alternative fuel corridors, as well in areas that are deemed disadvantaged communities. So that total $7.5 billion is broken down into two different programs. The first is $2.5 billion for all alternative fuels in a discretionary program, with funding over the next 5 years going from $300 million to $700 million. So increasing $100 million from next year over the next 5 years. And again, that funding is available for all alternative fuels. The next piece of the funding is the $5 billion for electric vehicle corridors specifically. That's $1 billion per year from 2022 to 2026. So the difference here is that this formula program is specifically for electric vehicles, whereas the $2.5 billion will be open to all alternative fuels. There's going to be a 50% funding split for designated alternative fuel corridors, where the remainder of that 50% would then be open to community access. And on top of this, the bill is requiring that states come up with a alternative fuels plan that outlines where and how this funding will be spent within the state. There isn't a deadline for those plans yet, but if a state does not submit that plan, then Federal Highway has the ability to kind of designate these funds within the state in a competitive process. So again, this is real high level. We've kind of sat in on a handful of webinars over the past few weeks. but there's not a whole lot out there on specifics. So we don't really know how this will all trickle down to us at the state and local level. But what is apparent is that, it does seem that there will be a particularly strong focus on spending this money along or around existing alternative fuel corridors, which in our region is I-87 and I-90, and then in disadvantaged communities as well. And from everything that I can gather, this is particularly focused on the fueling infrastructure side of things. And I haven't seen a whole lot on what might exactly be out there for the vehicles themselves. So I think that's still kind of to be determined. So that is all I had for our kind of clean communities updates. We do have a little bit of time here for news around the table. If anyone is interested in chiming in on what they have going on the alternative fuel side of things.
Thanks, Jacob. If no one else is in, I'll jump in. Steve I at the airport here. We've got some excellent press on Channel 10 and Channel 13 TV news and on their websites and all for our bringing up our solar-powered electric vehicle charging stations to 32. We had 16 previously. We added another 16. And I've got another 20 ready to go as soon as the next phase of Charge Ready New York, now suspended, comes back online. That'll hopefully be this January or February. We're all ready to go and hit the ground running. But right now, everyone's out of funds to support EVs at public facilities, to my knowledge. But we got excellent press. We're up to 32 stations. All are free of charge to the air traveling public at 5 convenient locations, both in the garages and surface lots. So just wanted to share that update with you. We're still shopping for airport-owned EVs. We still have a strong component of compressed natural gas dedicated fleet, pickup truck, and 5 buses still in service. Electric tugs and loaders on the air side. But yeah, we're trying to sort through the truck voucher program and any other incentive funds that we can. But right now, seems like a drought of funding support until we can get through the requirements, prerequisites, and until new EV station funding gets established. So that's my airport update. Thanks for flying Albany.
Thank you, Steve. Always good to hear from you. Anyone else on the call have any alternative fuel updates to share with the group today?
Yeah, I'll jump in really quick. Josh Dranoff here at Union College. I'm the sustainability coordinator. We installed 22 level 2 charging stations back in 2019, just before I came into the position. And EV Connect, which is our software provider, actually reached out to us to kind of do a spotlight on colleges and why using EV Connect software has been helpful to manage our electric vehicle miles traveled and gasoline avoided. So I'll share that to the group if you want to take a look at that. We're currently looking at our fleet. We have about 150 small, light duty golf carts up to medium duty. We don't really have many heavy duty vehicles, so still trying to kind of figure out what kind of funding is out there. We are a smaller campus, so putting any kind of new infrastructure is going to be a little difficult. We may have to move things around. But that's certainly something that is on my horizon, looking at always constantly. And then I think I do want to take a look at how many vehicle miles we are traveling on campus with our fleet vehicles to see what kind of impact we can have. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. So actually, quickly, are any of those golf carts, you don't currently have electric vehicles on campus? Is that?
Some of the golf carts are electric, and then the EV stations are they are public access. Yep. They're in all of our campus owned property, but they are open to any public user who has the EV Connect app.
For sure. That's great. Thank you for the update. Anyone else want to share any alternative fuel updates?
Just want to chime in from the airport again. Thanks, Josh. We're all EV Connect software also. It's very user friendly. So it's nice to know we have that in common.
Yeah, certainly.
Yep.
Hi, Mary Ellen. I see you have your hand raised. You can unmute and chime in if you'd like. Mary Ellen? Mary Ellen, can you hear me? I don't know if I can unmute you. Okay. Well, if there is anyone else that wants to chime in here, I'm sorry, Mary Ellen, I'm trying to get you in here, but I'm not sure if you can hear me. Okay, well, if we have no more updates this afternoon, I think we will wrap up. And again, want to thank you all for joining me here this afternoon. We will be anticipating another quarterly meeting in March 2022, where we'll hopefully have made some progress and collected some data on our annual reports, be able to provide some of that information back to you all. So look forward to hearing from you again then. And if I don't see any of you in the next few weeks, have a happy holidays and enjoy any time off that you might be having. So thank you all. Have a good afternoon.
Happy holidays.
Happy New Year, everyone. Thanks for flying, Albany. Thanks, Jay.